Assalamu alaikum, my name is Rakan Kayali. Welcome to Practical Islamic Finance. In this episode, I want to have a discussion about auto leases. I received a number of questions regarding the permissibility of auto leases in the United States. And the reason why people are asking is because many lease payments are broken down into component parts, which include something called a money factor. Oftentimes it's called a finance fee. Sometimes it's called an interest rate. So people want to know, is this riba or not? Now, in Islam, we make a distinction between renting an asset and renting money, right? Renting an asset is completely permissible. In the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, renting was commonplace. People used to rent out land all the time. The Prophet never prohibited them from doing so, which is considered a form of implicit approval because the default state for everything in Islam, with exception to rituals of worship, the default state for everything in Islam is permissibility. Renting money, on the other hand, is called riba in Arabic, and that is completely prohibited. It's prohibited in the strongest terms in Islam. And the reason for this distinction is because, well, there are many reasons, but perhaps one of the most important reasons is that when you're renting out an asset, the owner of that asset still is assuming the risk of owning that asset. Meaning, let's say I have a car and I rent it out to someone and they're paying rent for me. At the end of that rent period, when the car returns to me, I have no guarantees regarding how much my car is worth now. I don't know how much I can sell it for. I don't know how much I can rent it for again, right? So there's risks of profit and loss as the asset's owner. And so there's reciprocity there. The renter is receiving all the benefits of using the asset, but they're paying rent. And the owner of the asset is receiving rent, but they're taking on the risk of ownership. On the other hand, when you're loaning out money and charging interest, you are, as the lender, contractually, you're not taking any risk. Obviously, the contract may be broken, but in the contract, you're not taking any risk. You're saying, I want my money back and I want it more than I gave it to you. That is an unconscionable contract in Islam because it's so one-sided. The lender is guaranteeing their profit in the contract, regardless of what happens with the borrower. And that's something that Islam considers unconscionable and therefore prohibits. So the question regarding leasing or leasing a car is whether this money factor that is a part of many lease payments, whether this is compensation to the dealership for lending money or for renting out a car. So to answer this question, I called a number of dealers and, the answers I got were kind of fuzzy. I think part of the reason was because the people I spoke with weren't necessarily specialists. So I decided to actually go to a dealership and speak with a finance manager there. And I did. And the finance manager throughout so full disclosure here, when I was speaking with the finance manager, he was telling me, oh, it's an interest rate. Oh, it's an interest rate. But the way he was explaining it, it seemed like it was profit to them for renting out the car. It wasn't profit from lending money. And so I left the dealership inclined to believe that the money factor, even if they decide to call it an interest rate in some cases, is not a form of prohibited riba in Islam. Because there's no lending of money that's happening. I am very clearly receiving the right to use an asset for a specific period of time, and I'm paying for that with my own money. And I asked myself this question. I said, let's say I went to the dealership and the guy told me, No, it's not. He said, we don't charge an interest rate. We charge profit. This is what we charge. We have a profit. As a dealership, we have to earn a profit. I would have zero reason to think that that was prohibited in Islam. So just because the guy is calling it an interest rate should not have any bearing on my understanding of what it actually is. And I asked myself another question, and that is, why is it that I don't receive any questions about the permissibility of home leases or apartment leases? No one has any doubts about the permissibility of a housing lease. At least I've never heard of anyone asking that question. People accept that renting an apartment or a house is completely permissible in Islam. But why do they have doubts about an auto lease and not doubts about a housing lease or an apartment lease? And I think the reason is simply because the industry in auto leases uses terminology that causes Muslims to be uncomfortable, whereas in housing leases, they don't use that terminology. And I have a hunch that if the housing leasing industry started using money factors when calculating the rent payments that tenants were going to make, I would all of a sudden start receiving questions regarding the permissibility of those rent payments. And I understand this, but the fact of the matter is that Islam doesn't prohibit riba because of the name. It prohibits riba because of the way it treats borrowers. So based on this, I'm inclined to believe, as I mentioned, that there is nothing wrong with auto lease payments, even if they include something called a money factor. Because regardless of how the dealership decides to break down or explain what they charge customers. Let's say you have, dealership A and dealership B. Dealership A says they charge customers $500 a month to rent this Volvo. And the reason why it charges $500 is $100 as interest and $400 as depreciation. And on the other hand, you have dealership B that says we also charge $500. $100 is profit to us. We're in the business of renting, and this is our profit. And then $400 is depreciation on the car. Both dealerships, in my opinion, are equivalent in terms of their permissibility for a Muslim to use, because in substance they are offering identical products. So that's my opinion on auto leases. If there's something I've missed, please let me know. If there's something of substance that you'd like to share that you think should cause me to change my opinion, please let me know. I will always make it public if I have a change of opinion. Thank you for watching. This has been Practical Islamic Finance. Until next time, take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all.